Hello. We're going to pray and dismiss the children and youth. Dear Lord, we just lift up this service today. The word that you want to bring to us, to the youth and the children, that you would bless them upstairs and bless this meeting in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So tonight, Pastor Todd asked me 2 or 3 weeks ago to do a teaching on basically what the enemy's doing around us in our nation, in the world. There's going to be some sensitive subjects for young ears, but I believe they're all gone, so that's good. We're just going to start with the opening verse here, which is 2 Corinthians chapter 11, and I missed the verse, sorry. So that no advantage would be taken of us by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his schemes. So, and here Paul's saying is like they're not ignorant of what Satan is doing, right? Satan is at work around us, and we are in a battlefront, a war over the kingdom, and we are the warriors of God, and we need to know that what the enemy is doing so that we can combat it. If we are ignorant, if we bury our heads in the sand, I don't want to know what's going on, you're wrong. That goes directly against what the Bible says to do. Now, are we to spend our entirety of our lives studying what Satan is doing? No. But we do need to know what's going on in the world and what he is doing so that we can combat it. 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 8 and 9. Be of sober spirit. Be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. So resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same experiences of suffering are being accomplished by your brothers and sisters who are in the world. We're not alone in this fight. There's millions and millions of Christians all around this country. There's millions of Christians around the world that are all part of this fight. And much of the Western church is asleep to what's going on, and therefore we're not combating what's going on. So the first part of this teaching is going to be talking about social media. Okay? Social media is all around us. In fact, our services are on social media. We promote events and what's going on in the church on social media. But just because we use those services for good does not mean that Satan does not mean them for evil and is actively using them to destroy the church. Especially the focus on the young generation. I don't know if you could read this, but this breaks down the different generations. You have Generation Z, Gen Z. Those were people born approximately 1995 to 2010. 50% are on social media every day. 18% a few times a week, 9% once a week. So on. Millennials, approximately 1980 to 1994. 44% every day, 21% a few times a week. Overwhelming majority. Gen X, 60s and 70s babies. 37% daily, and 14% a few times per week. Drops, but it's still a large percentage are on there. Like we said, it can be for good, but most definitely is used for evil. And then the boomers, 26% daily, and 11% a few times per week. So these numbers are not overly alarming. Most of us, that's where we go to connect with friends and family. Like I said, the churches promotes their events there. But, overall, 94% of Gen Z uses social media, according to recent studies. So that, if you look at the previous chart and you totaled up, so I kind of wonder what happened to the other 6%. I don't know if they're Amish or what, but I don't know any that don't. And I doubt any of us do. But that's not so alarming. But the average user for Gen Z spends 10.6 hours every day. 10.6. Nearly 50% of your entire time is spent on social media. And this isn't even where it gets bad. 86% of young Americans want to become a social media influencer. Now, what does that mean? I'm sure there are people in here that have no idea what that means. A social media influencer. You hear YouTubers. We like to follow them. We watch their videos. There's people that review products. There's people that play video games, and people watch them play video games for hours on end. Sitting and watching someone else talk while they play video games for hours and hours and hours nonstop. All kinds of things. Vloggers and bloggers. What is a vlogger? That's people that literally live with a camera everywhere they go. There's children. One of the most highest grossing YouTube channels is a kid playing with toys. And kids watch a kid playing with toys. And they love it. Or kids will watch families that do all the coolest things that you could imagine. And then how many of them grow to resent their parents because their parents are working and they don't have a $10 million property with a big pool and all kinds of things and go on vacations daily. There's people that literally do nothing, couples that travel the world and do nothing but vacations. And they videotape and people watch it by the millions, just watching people go on vacation. And people will vicariously live through these influencers. The life that they want in their heart, they live through them. And that is how it gets in your brain. That's why 86% of young Americans want to become a social media influencer. The addictiveness of social media, and especially for influencers or aspiring influencers. That like button, the thumbs up, right? How many likes did I get on this picture? How many likes did I get on this post or this video? Why I have less votes? Why do people not like? They're not watching it. Never mind, it was listed at 2 in the morning and I'm looking at the like button at 4 in the morning and no one's liking it because everyone's in bed except for me. Then I enter depression, and suicide is through the roof with young people. Much of it directly because of social media. And it is designed very specifically to make you want those likes, to make you want those shares. And if you don't get them, it causes, it's a drug addiction. Literally, it releases dopamine in your brain. It is as strong as heroin. It is harder to kick than heroin addiction. And when you don't get those likes, you'll go through withdrawals, literally withdrawals, physically sick, and oftentimes people kill themselves if they are in the decline. This is common. This is an attack. It is designed specifically for you to want to go through it. Like gambling, you flip through. TikTok, right? The short videos. Slide next video, next video, next video, next video. Hoping to get the one you want that you enjoy, and then it's like a high that you get hit with when you finally find a video you like. And then you scroll some more. It's like a slot machine that you want to win, and you want to win, and you keep going and going and going. It is just as addictive or more addictive than gambling. How many people's lives have been destroyed by gambling addiction? And social media is just as bad or worse. Really, it's worse. So we have 94% of Gen Z on social media, most of us millennials, and pretty close to a majority of Gen X on there regularly, getting addicted to it. And it's extremely addictive. Watch the next YouTube video. Watch the next TikTok video. Scroll through your Snapchat. I've never had Snapchat, but that's more of the younger generation. Instagram, you name it. There's tons of them out there. Maybe you even are addicted to watching things that are good, like Bible teachings or learning about stuff. You know? There's nothing wrong with watching videos, learning how to do construction or things like that. That's good. But you can overdo it, and we easily do. And the social media, when the people that want to be these influencers, like we said, 86%, if they don't get the likes on YouTube, or they don't get the likes on Facebook or Snapchat or whatever they're on, if they don't get them there, they're going to find, well, where can I find likes? And now we have these social media companies defending pedophilia and groomers. They hate the word groomers. What's a groomer? Groomers are people that teach and train kids to accept pedophilia. That's what a groomer is. PayPal and Venmo, which is the same company, multiple avenues, they banned a group that was designed to be against groomers. It was actually a gay group. Because groomers more important than gay in this crazy left woke world. They banned them because they were against grooming children to be accepting of pedophilia. One day, after Disney CEO defends child sex grooming, 4 employees were busted in a major sex trafficking sting. Disney lost its mind when the governor of Florida passed a law to stop grooming, to fight it. They lost their minds over it. They are defending Disney. Disney is supposed to be a family business, the family-friendly experience, right? It's not. It hasn't been for a very long time. A very long time. And the church has been silent, and we just watch the shows. But there's so much. They are the world's largest producer of porn. Disney is. They are not family friendly. And we go on vacation down there, and we spend our money down there, and we keep feeding them so they can make more of this stuff to destroy families. Here's a title of another article. How are they allowing this? Patreon fires entire security team to protect minor attracted persons. Most of you probably don't know who Patreon is. Patreon is a specific avenue where people can pay the influencers that they follow. So if I like someone and they're a great influencer, I can give them my money because I want to support what they do. That's Patreon. And the security, we're not talking about armed security at the doors. We're talking about the cybersecurity. They were watching, they were seeing things that minors were being targeted by predators, and Patreon said their policy was, if the law enforcement doesn't tell us to stop, we don't stop it. That's their policy. And they fired their entire security team because the security team said, this is illegal, this is wrong. Twitter enforces its ban, calling people groomers, as anti-LGBTQ hate speech. So to say that grooming children to be raped and molested is wrong is considered hate speech. Twitter could face billions in fines over not protecting minors from porn. These are the social media companies. They are after our children. They want them. Why? Because they belong to Satan and they do the work of Satan, which is to destroy children. Many of the people that the Israelites were commanded to kill them all, many of those people sacrificed children to their gods. They were pure evil, and God wanted them wiped off the earth. God hates those who harm children. He hates it. And yet, Gen Z spends 10.6 hours every day on these platforms. It gets better. Has anybody here ever heard of OnlyFans? I was not familiar with OnlyFans. It has become a big thing in the last couple years, especially starting in 2020 during the lockdowns. OnlyFans is basically promoted as a way for these social influencers to have kind of like a behind-the-scenes VIP pass at a concert. That's the concept. So you could go meet, remember, in the old days, you'd go to concerts, you had a VIP pass, you could meet with the band in the back. That's kind of what OnlyFans is. You pay to access to this, okay? So I'm going to read a short paragraph out of this article from Bark. Bark is basically helping parents to defend and protect their kids from whatever it is, okay? And so so what is OnlyFans used for? If you're on social media, you probably follow people you like. Maybe they're funny or take great photos. They could be famous musicians, comedians, or models. Now imagine instead of following them for free, you could sign up to pay them a monthly fee to view special posts and extra content. But this is the thing. The by far primary extra content is porn. Pornographic, explicit sexual acts. And that's what young people are turning to because, why? They're addicted and they want to be an influencer. Well, if I can't do it on YouTube, I'll do it on OnlyFans, and I can have sex on camera and people will pay me. We're going to watch a short video from the BBC.
But we found that OnlyFans is failing to prevent some underage users from selling and appearing in videos. Police say one 14-year-old used her grandmother's passport to sell explicit images. And the mum of a 17-year-old says her daughter's bank account was frozen after she made £5,000 from posting nudes. These are the types of comments she received while promoting her OnlyFans account on Twitter. Some request more graphic content and ask if she'll meet up.
Well, she did say that originally. She was only going to be doing pictures of her feet.
The girl's mum, who is played by an actor to protect the teenager's identity, says she has since stopped posting on her account, but her nudes have been leaked across the internet.
She wants to go to college, but she suffers really badly with anxiety. You know, she won't go out anymore. She doesn't want to be seen.
OnlyFans says the girl had used a fake driver's license and that approving the account was an oversight during a transition to a more effective age verification system. All active subscriptions have now been refunded. Childline says children have anonymously contacted their counselling service and talked about their experiences on the site. Some reported separately being victims of historic sexual abuse.
I don't want to talk about the pictures I post because I know they're not appropriate for kids. Some of the girls have thousands of followers on Instagram. They must be raking it in. I want to be just like them.
It's becoming increasingly clear that OnlyFans is being used by children. Children on occasions are being blackmailed and exploited. The company are not doing enough to put in place the safeguards that prevent children exploiting the opportunity to generate money, but also for children to be exploited.
OnlyFans says their work to stop children accessing the site limits the likelihood of them being exposed to blackmail or exploitation, and if it's notified about these behaviours, it takes swift action and disables accounts. The site has grown massively across the world, including in the US, where we found a child featured on an account run by an adult. In Nevada, an 18-year-old sold videos on OnlyFans of her having sex with her 17-year-old boyfriend in breach of the site's rules. Friends say they earned $5,000 from one video alone. After we contacted OnlyFans, they shut down the account and refunded all active subscriptions.
That really hit our radar in 2019, where we saw a dozen or so children that were also linked with content on OnlyFans. And that dramatically increased in 2020. We saw it almost triple.
In a statement, OnlyFans says its age verification systems go over and above what is required by current regulations. It said it constantly reviews its systems to ensure that they are as robust as possible and manually reviews every application it receives. It added that it works with charities and organisations to raise any potential issues with the relevant authorities. In response to our findings, the government said that OnlyFans had failed to properly protect children and that the online safety bill would make sure this no longer happens.
So like we saw, that our young people are being sucked in by this because they want to be social influencers, and they're failing because it's very difficult, and only a small percentage of people succeed at becoming these social influencers, yet they're idolized in a way that the older generations can't even really comprehend, because celebrities in movies, it's not the same worship of these people, because in the social media influencers, oftentimes you can interact with them. You can do comments. If people on YouTube go live, you can pay to have a comment highlighted. You know, $5, $50, or whatever you want, and then you give that money and it highlights your comment, and then they'll be watching the comment and they'll talk to you, the viewer. So there's a higher level of interaction. It's not like watching a movie celebrity that you've seen all their movies 50 times and you really adore whoever that is. It's way worse. And because of that idolization of, people that have millions and millions of followers, or even 100,000 followers, or 30,000, anything more than whatever they have, they aspire for. And like I said, it's like a drug in their brain. When they have a success, they get a high. When you're using social media and you have what your brain interprets as a success, it creates a high. Your brain injects dopamine to give you that happy feeling over and over and over and over, and you get addicted to it more and more and more until it literally is more addicting than heroin. So anybody that's worked in any type of drug rehab understands that heroin is one of the worst to kick. And then they're selling their bodies and ruining their lives. And then once, even if they're like, they do get out of it, it's all out there. And you can't get rid of it. And so you live with shame. So we have millions and millions and millions of young people that live with this shame of what they've done, of things that they've done. And so suicide rates extremely high. And this is an attack by Satan on our young people, on our middle-aged people as well. It affects all of us. If we don't even realize it, and you don't even know, and then you suddenly have spent hours and hours and hours, and you didn't even realize it. Right? And that's why Gen Z, 10.6 hours average per day. That's an average. There's some of those people that are only an hour a day. Imagine the people on the upper end, you know? So, I don't want to quite move on yet from the social media, but there's a lot more still yet to cover. We've got to get it under control. We have to protect our kids. We have to protect them. These numbers aren't even out for the Generation A, which is the kids that were born basically after 2010. Those numbers aren't even out, and they live on screens. What is it? Most of the wealthiest schools in the country, super private, they have no devices in their schools. None. They don't want them. The super tech giant people that run this stuff, they don't let their kids on it. They don't want their kids. They've been quoted saying, this doesn't belong in education. Yet, our public schools push it. Every kid has a tablet. Every kid has a laptop. When we did the lockdowns, every kid was sent home with some type of a device to do all of their learning on a device, right? So our public school systems are pushing kids into the devices. Whether by choice, most of them, it's not even necessarily that they want to, it's just the design of the system that they have to. They don't have a choice in the matter. It's just how you have to do it now. 2 Peter chapter 2. So leading up to this group of scriptures, the first portion of the chapter is talking about false prophets. It talks about the flood and what was going on leading up to the flood. It talked about Lot being pulled out of Sodom and Gomorrah. Starting in verse 10. And especially those who indulge in the flesh in its corrupt desires and despise authority, daring, self-willed, they do not tremble when they revile against angelic majesties. Whereas angels who are greater in might and power do not bring a reviling judgment against them before the Lord. But these, like unreasoning animals, born as creatures of instinct to be captured and killed, reviling, where they have no knowledge, will, in the destruction of those creatures, also be destroyed. Suffering wrong as the wages of doing wrong, they count it pleasure to revel in the daytime. They are stains and blemishes, reveling in their deceptions as they carouse with you. Having eyes full of adultery, they never cease from sin, enticing unstable souls, having a heart trained in greed, accursed children. Forsaking the right way, they have gone astray, having followed the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. But he deceived a rebuke for his own transgression. For a dumb donkey, speaking with the voice of a man, restrained the madness of the prophet. These are springs without water and mists driven by a storm, for whom the black darkness has been reserved. For speaking out arrogant words of vanity, they entice by fleshly desires, by sensuality, those who barely escape from the ones who live in error, promising them freedom, while they themselves are slaves of corruption. For by what a man is overcome, by this he is enslaved. This is what Satan is doing to us, to our children, through social media. Right? Pretty strong words. We're going to go into the second half of the teaching. And this could have easily been 3 different Wednesday nights. I mean, there's so much content of this stuff out there, like trying to narrow things down. John 8:44, you are of your father the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. Whenever he tells a lie, he speaks from his own nature, because he is a liar and the father of lies. If we don't belong to God, we belong to the devil. Therefore, that's what we are. That right there. If you are not a Christian, you do not belong to God, you are of your father, the devil. Right? Therefore, lies and deception is paramount of those who serve Satan. And like we said, you serve Satan if you don't serve God. So this isn't necessarily just Satan worshipers. This is the people of the world. This is politicians. This is the media. This is everybody that is out there that's not serving God. We're going to watch a couple videos here, short ones, that just demonstrates a small smidget amount of the capabilities of deception.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see? I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
So this is an example of what is called a deep fake. Okay? It's been around for several years. The technology continues to improve to where it is virtually impossible for the eye to No. I mean, watching the Morgan Freeman first video, you would have no idea that he had nothing to do with that. Nothing. He wasn't talking. That was just recorded video where they mimic the voice. It was all CGI based off of video and pictures done of Morgan Freeman over the years. Like I said, there is so much just in this little thing here. I can't show you even a fraction of how it works, but basically there's a company out there that did video recordings of Holocaust survivors, so they could create holograms of them that can interact with you, and you could ask them questions and they respond to your questions about the Holocaust. Just as an example, not necessarily a bad thing, but I think you can imagine what they could do when you're watching TV and you have no idea if the person you think is talking actually said that or had anything to do with it, right? You know, what if it was a politician? Or what if the politician does say it? They can claim, I didn't make that video, someone else did. It wasn't me, right? They can deny it. And there's ways to detect it if it went to like court of law, but once it's out there, and anybody that watches it, unless you really try to find out, you're just going to believe that they actually said whatever it was, right? You know, what if it was, I was talking to Pastor Todd about this yesterday, I don't remember. Imagine if somebody made a video of Robert Morris saying that it was okay to be gay according to the Bible. Suddenly, everybody that follows him watched it, and ain't watching him again, false teacher, right? But what if it was fake? He could deny it all he wants, but the people that watched it already made their mind up. The damage is done. Cat's out of the bag. Reputation's destroyed, right? And it would be very easy for anybody that's done video. They need 40 minutes of audio of you talking to reproduce your voice completely. 40 minutes, that's it, of audio, not video. Of audio recording of you talking. And I don't mean this wrong, but who here talks on the phone ever? What if they record it? It's that simple, right? It's that simple. You talk on the phone. And it doesn't have to be 40 minutes cumulative. That's the thing. It's just 40 minutes total time of talking because it gets the influxes of your voice and changes and things like that. They can take still pictures of people that long dead, and reconstruct their face and do a video of them. And if they have any audio recording of them, now they can recreate that person from history. They could recreate Hitler. There's plenty of content out there to do it. Who's they? Anybody with a computer and 30 minutes of time and the content. For free. Because there's apps out there that allow you to do that for free. So anybody that has is malicious towards another person can literally do that. I mean, and to include, like, one of the biggest ways that this is used is in the porn industry. They put famous people's faces on porn. Well, imagine if it wasn't somebody like famous, but like what if it was you? And they wanted to destroy your reputation. Kind of thing, right? I mean, that's the whole point of how it can be used against people, against anybody. If you have a political enemy, you could destroy him in a moment by putting something out there that's totally fake. Here's a video of an impressionist. He does it for a living. He's an influencer.
I'm Jim Eskerman, and I wrote a poem about what it feels like to be an impressionist. Is anything more sad and lame, contemptible, beneath disdain.
In short, provoking of disgust, than being an impressionist.
A third-rate, even fourth-rate skill. The definition of cheap thrill. Like watching farm equipment rust is watching an impressionist. Relic from a distant day that long since should have died away. Dishonorably mentioned is the pitiful impressionist.
Weird and slightly ostentatious tired debris from old Las Vegas,
Whose former fans have long dismissed allegiance to impressionists.
How many opportunities passed up and wasted because he's hell-bound to follow what he must? Pity the poor impressionist. Doomed to live in abject failure, dogged by his own echolalia. Better to crumble into dust than wind up an impressionist. His borrowed voices can't deflect a life of well-deserved neglect. His name's on simply no one's lips. Forgotten, vain impressionist.
That sound. Did anybody moan? That creature with the microphone.
Is last on everybody's list. Forgettable impressionist. When Peter, at that shiny gate, condemns those souls who imitate, "You will but shake a heavenly fist and curse condemned impressionists."
But till that time, we'll tolerate the good-for-nothing reprobate.
And hide the truth that we're just pissed that we can't be impressionists. Oh. That's better.
It just kind of shows example, right? I mean, he went through how many famous actors there? And then you do your hair up. And the thing is, the way that our brains interpret faces is that there's so many details in the world. God created so many details. Our brains can't process everything instantaneously. So our brains fill in the gaps from what our expectation is. It picks up a few details and it fills in the gaps for us. So that's why magic tricks work so well. Because magic tricks, a lot of times, are illusions that trick the brain into seeing something that's not there or not seeing something that's there. That's the trick. And so, because our brain fills in those gaps when we're just consuming on TikTok, boom, 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 you don't even know if what you're watching is real. There are entire social influencers that don't even exist. Totally created by CGI. That's computer graphics. Okay? And AI. And why do I show all this is because we have to, the only way is we have to be in touch with the Holy Spirit to know the truth. Because we can't trust what we see. Period. Even on TV, whatever it is. Even if it's someone you think you can trust. You don't know. So you have to know through God, really, if something's real or not. We need to not react to what we see on TV or on social media and whatnot without prayer. Anything that's big and impactful, we need to stop immediately and don't make an assumption based off of what you just saw or heard. Because it could be a lie. We don't know. There was an executive order called the Using Behavioral Science Insights to Better Serve the American People. Sounds really nice, doesn't it? This was an executive order in 2013 signed by President Barack Obama, which allowed the government to use psychological operations against the American people. That is what that is. Now, psychological operations, what does that mean? I worked with people that were in PSYOP in the military. It is to convince somebody of something that you want them to believe, period. To change their mind or to drive fear or confusion or whatever emotion or reaction you want them to respond to. That is psychological operations. You know, we went through a major psychological operation in 2020 and 2021 around COVID. It was an entire psyop. Am I saying that COVID's not real? No, not at all. We know it's real. But it was a psyop against the American people and the world to drive fear and cause fear. We locked down the country over something we couldn't see with our own eyes, right? And we lived in fear, we being the general public. Churches were shut down completely, but bars were open, right? Liquor stores, we definitely got to keep them open. We don't want the alcoholics to go on a rampage, right? Everyone turned to what? To interact with people. What did they turn to? Social media, right? Because we weren't on there enough. We need to be on there more. Wearing a mask. At the time, in March, April 2020, we had a mask mandate. I forget, it started in, I think May is when Governor Halcomb signed the mask mandate. Masks cause a lot of psychological damage to people, especially children. That is proven time and time again now, for sure, 100%. Many studies prove that there is an entire generation of children that don't even know how to talk because you learn to talk by watching your parents' mouths move. And so they couldn't talk. There's still kids to this day that can't talk because of wearing masks. Around their parents were wearing masks 24/7. I mean, there was people literally going to bed with a mask on. Why? Because it was a psychological operation on the brains of the people to drive fear. Driving the vaccines, driving the lockdowns, driving all the different things that were going on throughout that, which technically is still going on, but Biden said it was over, but then the White House said it wasn't, so they're kind of confused. But, well, that literally happened. He said the pandemic was over. The White House said, whoa, he didn't mean that. But regardless, for most Americans in, we'll say, redder states, the pandemic's over, right? But it's still loud, it's still strong in many of the major cities. And the larger the town or city, the more you walk around and see masks on still to this day. Right? There's people that are afraid to not wear a mask because they might be confused that they might be a Republican. And I don't want to be misidentified as a Republican. That literally people will wear a mask for that only reason. Psychological warfare on the brain of the American people and the world at large. That was COVID. And people are still in fear today about it. Then you follow that up with everything that revolved around the 2020 election, right? I mean, that's a long list of everything that was going on. Well, and even between that, you had the quote-unquote summer of love with all the riots in all the cities were on fire. Right? That was a continual bombardment of a psychological operation on the American people. That's what it was. It was all planned. Most of the rioters were brought in on buses. We know that. It's not even, there's no denying those things. They were bussed in, paid people to riot. That's why they didn't care whose businesses they destroyed. It wasn't their town. It wasn't their city. I mean, they even were talking about coming all the way to Knightstown. And then a bunch of people showed up with guns and said, not in our town. That literally happened. And there was small towns all over this country that had the same response. Or those that didn't, Antifa did come and riot in small towns. It was not held only to major cities. That was a psychological operation done against the American people. We're finding more and more that, like, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was that plot to kidnap the governor of Michigan. So all the people that were part of that plan, one of them was not FBI. The rest were all FBI agents. How crazy is that? The FBI planned it. They found some sucker to be the guilty one, and they planned it and encouraged him to do it. And they've been doing that since the Patriot Act because they need to keep terror alive, because that's their promotion. That's the environment of the FBI for the last 20 years. Has been, we need to find people to make into criminals so that we can arrest them. That's been happening, like I said, since the Patriot Act. Because that's their funding. It's all about the money and their promotions. And now they're raiding their political opposition. Dozens upon dozens. In one day, I think there was 35 raids on conservative Trump-allied individuals. In one day, the FBI raided them. Why? You have to come to your own conclusion on why. Were they all criminals? Were they all doing wrong things? There are people still in jail from January 6th. This all goes back to the voter fraud stuff. January 6th, there's people still in jail to this day that have never been before a judge. They've been in jail for, well, it's going to be almost 2 years. Year and a half in jail without seeing a judge. Patriot Act. Deception, right? They've termed the January 6th event as equal to or worse than 9/11. They've labeled anybody that is sympathetic to an entire political party as being terrorists. Well, if you're labeled a terrorist, what does that mean? You have no rights under the Patriot Act. That's what that means. You don't have any rights as a U.S. citizen. The Constitution doesn't apply to you if they label you a terrorist. Deception, lies, attacks of the enemy. Are we to be in fear? No. But we need to be aware of what's happening, aware of what is going on in this country and in the world. We have massive inflation. We have gas prices that are arm, leg, and both. If you can't read it from down there, I read it for you. Right? Inflations are hitting incredible highs. For the first time in I don't know how many years, the Federal Reserve has increased interest rates for 3 quarters in a row by 0.75. That's a massive amount, and it's going to keep going. And they've already said, we're going to keep raising it to stop inflation. Regardless of how many jobs are lost, regardless of the harm that it will do, we have to stop the inflation. That's what they've said. This is an image of the stock market today from that starts in end of April there. You can see it's down, it went back up, and then down, 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 down. Most of us here are old enough to remember 2008. And this is looking way worse. It's all part of the deception. It's all part of the attack of the enemy. Right? Most of the inflation and the gas prices were caused by decisions made by those that serve Satan. Right? And if you don't serve God, you serve Satan. We've already established that. So they're doing Satan's work. New York Post. Federal government is using social media giants to censor Americans. Okay? What does that mean? We know for a fact the FBI meets with the leaders of social media companies to tell them to silence certain things. We even have a video about that very
How do you guys handle things when they're a big news item that's controversial? Like there was a lot of attention on Twitter during the election because of the Hunter Biden laptop story. The New York Post.
We have that too.
Yeah, so you guys censored that as well?
So we took a different path than Twitter. I mean, basically the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like you should be on high alert. There was we thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. So our protocol is different from Twitter's. What Twitter did is they said you can't share this at all. We didn't do that. What we do is we have. If something is reported to us as potentially misinformation, important misinformation, we also have this third-party fact-checking program because we don't want to be deciding what's true and false. And for I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false, the distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could still share it, you could still consume it.
So when you say the distribution is decreased,
it got shared.
How does that work?
It basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely...
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's meaningful. But I mean, basically a lot of people were still able to share it. We got a lot of complaints that was the case. Obviously this is a hyper-political issue, so depending on what side of the political spectrum, you either think we didn't censor it enough or censored it way too much. But we weren't sort of as black and white about it as Twitter. We just kind of thought, hey, look, if the FBI, which I still view as a legitimate institution in this country, it's like very professional law enforcement, they come to us and tell us that we need to be on guard about something, then I want to take that seriously.
Did they specifically say you need to be on guard about that story?
No, I don't remember if it was that specifically, but it basically fit the pattern.
Now remember what we said earlier. John chapter 8:44. You are of your father the devil. Whenever he tells a lie, he speaks from his own nature because he is a liar and the father of lies. Right? So, I'll leave it up to you if you think that's Mark Zuckerberg. If you do not know, he is the one in charge of Facebook, okay? He's been before Congress and Senate many times talking about how great Facebook is in terms of fairness and all that, right? We know how true that is. So, I think it would be fair to say that he probably lies a lot. I don't know what percentage. He may not know the exact percentage, but I bet he's got a good idea, right? I bet I don't remember if it was specifically about that story. Did they mention the story? It was about the Hunter Biden laptop that they said was a lie, that the New York Post had an article about the Hunter Biden laptop, and Facebook and YouTube and Twitter basically said you could not share this, or they would make it to where if you shared it, no one would see it, okay? Right before the election. And it's all proven true. The Hunter Biden laptop does exist. The FBI had it long before. They've done nothing with it. We know that. It's not even up for question of whether it exists. It was his laptop, and it does contain a lot of horrible, incriminating things. Period. And they suppressed it or blocked it completely. And what is it? Even without the fraud, if people that wanted to vote for Biden would have known about it, I think it was 26% would not have voted for him. That's a significant number of people that basically 3 companies being told by the FBI to silence it, silenced it. That's our government and our social media, evil companies, right? Doing the will of Satan. Because they work for Satan, right? And there's plenty of other examples of this. We know the FBI is actively working for one political party more than the other, or one general type of alignment, which is pro-big government, right? Okay, next subject here. Central bank digital currency. Anybody familiar with that? Have any idea what that means? It's called the CBDC. A CBDC is where a cashless society, that's the goal. All money will be digital. There will be no physical currency. On May 9th, Biden signed an executive order that says, let's get on it, basically. We need to have this currency. Well, what happened in May, or rather in the springtime? Do you guys remember the trucker movement in Canada? Okay. Well, at the end, when they broke it up, Trudeau locked all the bank accounts of anybody involved. Locked it down, boom. You could not get your money. You couldn't go to the bank and get your money. Now, it wasn't overly successful because they were mostly prepared for it. The truckers were, and the people involved, and they had cash and means around it. And because Canada was not prepared with a CBDC to handle it properly, it kind of failed on Trudeau's part, thankfully. So then, shortly after that, Biden signs this executive order saying, we need this now. Come on, let's get on this. Why? Because if there's no cash, and remembering COVID, there was a coin shortage. Why was there a coin shortage? Nobody was out and about. Where were all the coins? That doesn't make any sense. But there was. Everyone remembers it, right? And what did they say? Well, if you come and pay cash, then we can't guarantee you'll get change. So what are you going to do? I'll pay with my card, my digital currency. Right? Training us to go to the cards. Always training us. They've been doing that and working us towards this direction. Well, if I bring to your remembrance, there's something in Revelations that if you do not accept it or take it, if you're here, you will not be able to buy, sell, or trade. Right? Something called the mark of the beast. Is the CBDC going to be the mark of the beast? No, and yes. It is a precursor, is a prelude to it. It's preparing the way for it, right? Get rid of all the cash, make it to where it's all digital. And, like I said, they can control the cash. Okay? Then, the Federal Reserve announced social credit system exercise. This was just recently. To ensure banks can comply with climate models. What? What? A social credit system exercise. What's that mean? Well, Tim, your truck just takes too much gas. Your account's locked. You can't buy any more fuel for the next month. Sorry, you're tapped out because you're over your social credit system via climate change. Your footprint is too large, therefore you are not allowed to buy fuel. Pastor Todd, you bought steak last month. You can't buy steak this month. Locked. Too much meat. Those cows are farting, and that's causing climate change. You can't eat that meat. Go eat some bugs. Think I'm joking? That's reality. That's what they want. We find it's funny, of course, but it's not, because they're serious about it. In Denmark, anybody hear about the farmers protesting in Denmark? Why were they protesting? Because they were told they couldn't have as many cows because they fart too much and burp too much. That's real. In the middle of looming food crisis. No, you cannot have that many cattle on your farm. So what did the farmers do? They drove their manure trucks and they dumped manure on the government buildings all over the streets. For real, they did it, and they should. Right? That's what they're protesting about, saying, no, you're not allowed to farm the way that you've been farming, and your parents are farming, and your grandparents are farming, and your great-grandparents are farming. We can't have that. Cows are dangerous. That's for real. Never mind that, what was it, in the early 1800s, there were something like 70, I'm going to mess it up, million or billion, I got a picture on my phone with it, number of buffalo in America, which is like 3 times the number of cattle that we have today, or more. It's a massive amount. It's total baloney. Why? Because they're of their father, the devil, and they are liars. And they lie to control, to destroy, because they hate us. They hate God's creation. They despise God's creation because they serve the devil who despises God's creation. So they want to exercise a social credit system that is only possible to the fullest degree if you have a CBDC. Because if you have cash in a society that still accepts cash, then you can still buy that steak, and they don't know that you bought that steak. Right? They don't know that you went to Casey's and bought that gas. I mean, they can figure it out, but it's too much work. It's a lot easier if it's on your card. Or if you put a chip in your hand or your forehead. It's real easy. Okay, you can buy this steak. You haven't had any in 6 months. Just yesterday, the White House has put out a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. AI, artificial intelligence, Bill of Rights. If you were to go on the White House website and read that, you would think it's a good thing. If you were to read it, at first glance, it seems like a good thing. It seems like you're going to have rights as a person on social media, right, that you're going to be, but there's caveats, because the Bill of Rights applies to what they call the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Not stockholders, stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? The stakeholders are people like the World Economic Forum, the Agenda 2030 people. Those are the stakeholders. Not you and I. That was, like I said, that was literally yesterday that they came out with that. The Bill of Rights. So we know they don't like the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. We know that, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be censoring us on social media, would they? Otherwise, they wouldn't be trying to ban guns, would they? They wouldn't be they wouldn't approve things like the Patriot Act that basically says the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply to you. And if you don't know what the Fourth Amendment is, go get you a pocket Constitution and Declaration of Independence and keep it on you and read it. You need to know your rights. Who gives you the rights? God. They are not government given, they are God-given rights. That is declared by the Declaration of Independence and sealed by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. God-given rights, not government. We have a right to assemble. We have a right to have church, like we're doing right now. God-given right. We have a right to bear arms, to defend ourselves and defend other people, defend the innocents, and that is a very godly thing to do. And we have a right to do it given by God, and as a Christian, I dare say a duty to do that. That's what much of the revolution was about, was the Christian people standing up for their God-given rights. And we have been trained over the last 100 years to believe that the government gave us these rights, and the government can take them away. You don't have a right to have a machine gun. What's a machine gun? Well, it depends on who you're talking to. Right? They're trying to do an assault weapons ban. They don't even know what that even means. It's like the guys that write the hunting laws in Indiana on what calibers you can do. They're dumb and idiots, don't know a thing about what calibers are good calibers to hunt deer with. Same people that want to take your guns. Right? They don't know what they're talking about. They're literally idiots in the term. And they're people in charge that couldn't tell you half the parts of an M16 or an AR, which is the same platform, which has all of the same parts except for one little switch is the only difference between an M16 and an AR-15. One little switch. It's the same switch, just goes one more step further that makes it 3-round or full auto depending on the version. Ours don't have that. Not that I have an AR. I wouldn't say that I do. So they want an AI Bill of Rights that gives the stakeholders, they, them, the powers that be, all authority. Okay? The rights to defend themselves, the rights to do what they want, not our rights. They don't want us to have any rights. Okay? Another organization that most people haven't heard of, but we've all seen them on TV, is the executive service. I didn't write it down. I was going to, and then the song was over. The last song, I was writing it down. I was like, "Sorry, I'll get up there." But it's basically the senior executive service of the government. It's the highest level civil service. These people are the people that run this country behind the scenes. Fauci is one of them, or was. He retired, I think, or is going to. They're not fireable. The President of the United States cannot fire them. Because Congress said, they voted years and years and years ago, and voted and said, we're going to give all the rights to govern to these people, to execute all the laws. So that's the highest levels of the DOJ, the highest levels of the FBI, the highest levels of the IRS, the highest levels of all the different areas of government, and they are not fireable people, no matter who you vote for. And they get to do what they want. They do everything but write the laws. They write policy, and then they enforce policy as though it's law. What other deceptions? Anybody hear about Nord Stream 2? Gas pipeline leak? If you don't know what it is the primary source of natural gas from Russia to Europe, and NATO has come out and said it was sabotage. It was something like 70 pounds of explosives were used on the pipeline, and it was like 70 meters under the ocean. So it may not even be repairable. More than likely, that is going to cause massive amounts of people freezing and dying in Europe from lack of fuel to heat their homes. And they said it was sabotage. Now, we don't know who did it. It could be Russia. If it was Russia, it would be Russia attacking themselves so that they could blame it on the West. Okay? Or it could be the West, and Biden was quoted before the invasion, if you invade Ukraine, there will be no Nord Stream 2. He said it. And he's not the only one that said it. I'm not saying that the West did it. I'm not saying Russia did it. I don't know. But one of the two of them did it, and it very likely could spark nuclear war. And this is the thing. Ukraine has applied to be in NATO. If NATO accepts it, and they're trying to fast track it, we are automatically in war with any country that attacks another NATO country. That is our treaty with NATO. So therefore, if they allow Ukraine to join NATO, then we are instantly in war, period. 80% of Americans believe that we are headed to World War III. 80%. All the signs are there. Putin is testing a torpedo nuclear bomb. That's what he's talking about testing. It shoots out of a submarine. It's a torpedo. And if it's successful, it can create a radioactive tidal wave. Scary stuff. Not that we should be in fear. One, we're not really the target. But two, scary stuff. Lots of people die. If we have another world war, it will make World War II look like a minor skirmish. And people today are not hardy like they were in the 40s and 30s. They don't have gardens and chickens and rabbits. They don't know how to can. They don't know how to preserve food. They don't know how to work hard today. Like really hard work. People today don't know. Why? Because they're spending 10.5 hours on social media every day. It's not hard work if you're sitting on social media all day, right? So the victory gardens of America that helped propel America to victory, because people could produce their own food in their backyard, if people don't know how to do it today, what happens? Mass starvation. We're going to close with this. Luke 19:11-13. Now while they were listening to these things, Jesus went on to tell a parable, because he was near Jerusalem, and they thought that the kingdom of heaven was going to appear immediately. So he said, a nobleman went to the distant county to receive a kingdom for himself, and then to return. And he called 10 of his slaves and gave them 10 minas, and said to them, do business with this money until I come back. Jesus said, occupy until I return. That's our command. Occupy. Occupy is a military term. When we had the invasion of Iraq in 2003, we went in to occupy that country. It was an invasion to take over and occupy and own. That is our command. When Jesus said the master gave 1 mina to each of them, go, do something with it. If you read the rest of the parable, some of them did, and he rewarded them, and some of them did nothing, and their reward was taken away, and they got nothing. As Christians, we are told to occupy until he returns, whether that's tomorrow, or that's in 50 years, or 100 years, or 1,000 years. We are to occupy until the end. That means we are to fight for the kingdom of heaven, whether it's physical and spiritual, or just spiritual. We are to occupy. We are not to bow over. We are not to hand our kids over to Satan. We are to guard them. We are to guard one another. We need to help each other and protect one another as the body of Christ. And we need to come against the enemies and come against the lies of the enemy and occupy. This country was created by God for God. Are we going to hand it over to him, or are we going to occupy? We're going to keep bowing our heads, praying quietly, or are we going to fight? And the day may come that it's physical. Today is not that day. Today we are preparing. Today we are fighting on social media. We are fighting by having Bible studies. We are fighting by teaching our children the Word of God. We are fighting by having prayer time. Right? We're fighting by going out and evangelizing. We need to tell people what's going on. They're destroying an entire generation of people through social media. An entire generation is being destroyed, utterly destroyed. The military has turned woke. What's that even mean? Well, what was it? The first Army lieutenant that was trans was just busted for selling secrets to Russia. Just happened. The Air Force Academy has now banned the words parents, mom, and dad. No, we can't say that. We have to say they, them. That's our military. And they're kicking out 180,000 because they refuse to take a vaccine that's not effective. Occupy. That is a command from Christ. We are to fight till the end. Running our race to the end. Whether it's by old age, persecution, or Jesus comes back. Occupy until he returns. Sorry, I went over. I wasn't sure how long I would be, but I obviously a little passionate about this stuff. But we have to be, or we're gonna be killed without doing nothing. Lord, I just pray that you would be with us, each and every one of us. Give us the strength to occupy. Give us the wisdom on what you want us to do, how you want us to do. Lord, give us the ability to turn off the social media when we need to turn it off. Give us the ability to seek you, to seek one another, to be in fellowship with one another. Lord, give us eyes to see the lies of the enemy so that we would not be blindsided by his attacks. Give us wisdom. Be with us this week and everywhere we go. In Jesus' name, amen.